Sylvester Stallone stepped between the bully and a cowering stranger, catching a shoved bar stool across his forearm as glasses shattered against the floor. The bigger man lunged forward, grabbing Stallone by the collar and slamming him against the bar rail, but Stallone didn't flinch. He locked eyes and refused to break. What happened in the next 45 minutes would become Hollywood bar legend, a story whispered about for decades. What happened in the next 45 minutes would become Hollywood legend, a story whispered about for decades in every dive bar from West Hollywood to the Jersey Shore. And I'm going to tell you every single second of it. But first, you need to understand the night. It's 1978. Stallone has just come off Rocky. He's the biggest name in the world. He's not some pampered pretty boy either. This man grew up in Hell's Kitchen, got kicked out of 14 schools, lived in a flophouse, and once sold his dog because he couldn't afford to feed it. He bought that dog back the week Rocky made him a millionaire. That's who we're talking about. So Stallone walks into this bar on Sunset Boulevard. Small place, maybe 30 people inside. He's not there to be seen. He's there because a buddy of his, a stunt coordinator named Ray, told him to come grab a drink after a long day of pre-production meetings. Stallone slides onto a stool at the far end of the bar, orders a whiskey neat, and keeps his head low. He's wearing a leather jacket, no sunglasses, no entourage. Just a guy having a drink, and for about 20 minutes that's exactly what he does. Then the door opens. Now here's what nobody tells you. The guy who walked in wasn't some random drunk. His name was Dale Mancuso. Believe me, that name mattered in certain circles. Dale ran a chain of martial arts studios across Southern California. He'd competed in full-contact karate tournaments. He had hands the size of dinner plates and a neck that looked like it was welded directly to his shoulders. Dale also had a reputation, not just as a fighter, as a guy who liked to prove things. Specifically, he liked to prove that traditional martial arts were superior to boxing. He said it in interviews, he said it at seminars. He built his entire brand around the idea that a trained martial artist could dismantle any boxer on the planet. Dale walked in with two guys flanking him. They found a table near the center of the room. Drinks arrived fast. The bartender knew him. Everybody in that part of town knew him. And for a little while, Dale was just another customer. Then somebody leaned over to Dale's table and said 4 words that changed the entire night. "That's Stallone over there." Get this. Dale didn't even look at first. He took a sip of his beer, set it down slow, and then turned his whole body on the chair. He stared at Stallone's back for a good 10 seconds. Then he stood up. Stallone was mid-conversation with Ray. They were talking about a fight sequence for a movie, going back and forth about camera angles. Stallone had his forearms on the bar, relaxed, loose. He didn't see Dale coming. Dale walked right up and stood behind Stallone's left shoulder. Close. Too close. The kind of close where you can feel someone's body heat on your neck. Ray stopped talking mid-sentence. His eyes went up and over Stallone's shoulder. That's how Stallone knew. He turned. Dale was standing there with his arms crossed, looking down. "You're the Rocky guy," he said. "Not a question, a label. The way you'd tag a piece of luggage." Stallone set his glass down. "That's what they tell me. You know, I've been saying for years that movie is the worst thing that ever happened to fighting in this country," Dale said. "You made a whole generation of kids think boxing is the answer. Boxing is limited. A boxer walks into my gym, I'd put him on the floor in 30 seconds. Stallone's jaw tightened. He shifted his weight on the stool so his feet were flat on the ground. Ready, not aggressive. Ready. There's a difference. "I appreciate the feedback," Stallone said. "It's not feedback." Dale uncrossed his arms and put one hand flat on the bar, right next to Stallone's drink, leaning in, crowding the space. "It's a fact. And you walking around pretending to be some kind of fighter is an insult to guys like me who actually know what combat is." That's when Ray stood up. Ray was a big guy himself, former Marine, not someone who backed down. But Stallone put his hand on Ray's forearm, just held it there, didn't push, didn't squeeze, just a touch that said sit down. Ray sat down. Stallone turned fully toward Dale now, both feet on the floor, both hands on his thighs. His shoulders were squared, but his voice stayed level. "I'm an actor. I played a character. That character boxes. I'm not out here claiming to be Muhammad Ali." "Doesn't matter," Dale said, and his voice got louder. Loud enough that conversations at nearby tables died. "You put that image out there. Millions of people saw it. And now every tough guy in America thinks he can throw a right cross and handle himself. Meanwhile, a real fighter, someone with actual discipline, actual technique, would take that right cross, redirect it, and break the arm attached to it. I swear this happened. Stallone didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. He picked up his whiskey, took a slow sip, set it back down and said, "Sounds like you've got something to prove tonight, but it's not going to be with me, not here." Dale's two buddies had drifted closer. They were standing about 6 feet behind him now, one on each side. Not threatening exactly, but positioned. The bartender, a guy named Mick ironically enough, had his hand under the bar, probably on a bat, probably wishing he'd called in sick. Dale leaned in even closer. "What's wrong, Rocky? Afraid to step outside?" And right there, that's where most people think Stallone should have unloaded. Right? Guy's in your face, he's disrespecting you. He's got backup. You're Sylvester Stallone. You've trained with real boxers. You've been hit for real on camera. You know how to fight. So you crack him, right? Wrong. No, seriously. That's the wrong move, and Stallone knew it. Here's what people forget. Stallone wasn't just strong. He was smart. Street smart. The kind of smart you get from growing up where one wrong move gets you stabbed in a stairwell. He knew exactly what Dale wanted. Dale wanted a scene. Dale wanted Stallone to throw a punch so Dale could demonstrate his martial arts superiority in front of 30 witnesses. Win or lose the actual fight, Dale would dine out on the story forever. Stallone swung at me and I took him down. Or even better, from Dale's perspective, Stallone swung at me and I had to defend myself. Either way, Dale wins the narrative. Stallone wasn't going to give him that. So instead, Stallone did something that nobody in that bar expected. He stood up slowly, and when he was fully upright, the height difference between them shrank. Dale had maybe 2 inches on him, not the towering advantage it looked like when Stallone was sitting. Stallone was broader in the chest, thicker through the arms, and he held himself with a center of gravity that said he'd been in actual gyms, not just movie sets. But he didn't square up. He extended his hand. "I'm Sly," he said, "and you're clearly passionate about what you do. Buy you a drink?" Now this is the part where you need to picture the room. 30 people, dead silent, every eye locked on these 2 men. The jukebox was playing something, Fleetwood Mac maybe, and it sounded absurd against the tension. Dale looked down at Stallone's hand. His 2 buddies exchanged a glance. The bartender's knuckles were white under the counter. Dale didn't take the hand. "I don't want a drink from you," he said. "I want you to admit right here, right now, that what you put on screen is a joke, that a real martial artist would destroy a boxer. Say it. Say it in front of all these people." Stallone let his hand hang there for 1 more second. Then he dropped it to his side. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. If you've seen the scene in Rocky, where he's standing in the ring and he realizes Apollo Creed is actually trying to hurt him, that moment when the game becomes real, that's what happened on Stallone's face. Trust me on this. What came next is where it gets wild. Stallone didn't answer Dale's demand. Instead, he turned to Ray. "Pay the tab, we're leaving." He started to walk toward the door, just like that, turning his back on a 6'4" martial artist who was publicly trying to humiliate him. 30 people watching Sylvester Stallone walk away. Dale couldn't handle it. You could see it on his face. The whole play was built around confrontation. He needed Stallone to engage. He needed the clash. Walking away was the one move Dale hadn't prepared for, and it made him look like the aggressor harassing a guy who just wanted a quiet drink, which is exactly what he was. So Dale did what guys like Dale always do when they're losing control of the room. He escalated. He reached out and grabbed Stallone's shoulder. Hard, fingers digging into leather and muscle. He spun Stallone halfway around. And that's when the shove happened. That shove I told you about at the start. Dale pushed Stallone in the chest with both hands, full force, and Stallone hit the bar stool and the bar stool scraped across the floor. Stallone caught himself on the rail. His drink toppled. Whiskey spread across the bar in a dark streak. Now listen to me carefully. Everything in the room changed in that second. This wasn't a verbal confrontation anymore. Dale had put his hands on another man, in front of witnesses. That's assault, and more importantly, it triggered something in Stallone that all the words in the world hadn't been able to reach. Stallone straightened up. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He peeled his fingers off the bar rail one at a time. He rolled his shoulders once, and he looked at Dale with an expression that I can only describe as completely, terrifyingly calm. "You just made a mistake," Stallone said. Dale grinned. This was what he wanted. Finally, the fight. He dropped into a stance, left foot forward, hands up in a karate guard, weight on his back leg. His two buddies moved to either side of the room. Whether they were planning, jump in, or just watch, nobody knew yet. And here's where Stallone showed why he's not just an actor who plays tough guys. He's a guy who studied fighting his entire life. He trained with real boxers for Rocky. He sparred with professional heavyweights. He understood distance, timing, and angles in a way that most people never will. Stallone didn't mirror Dale's stance. He didn't put his fists up. He took one step to his left, putting a bar stool between them, not hiding behind it, using it, controlling the geometry of the space. Dale would have to move around the stool or over it. Either way, he'd be off balance for a half second. Dale feinted forward. Stallone didn't bite. He kept his eyes on Dale's chest, not his hands, not his feet. Chest, because the chest tells you where the whole body is going. That's a boxing fundamental. Pay attention to that. It matters in about 60 seconds. Come on, movie star, Dale said. He shifted left, trying to get around the stool. Stallone mirrored him, keeping the obstacle between them. Stop dancing. I'm not dancing, Stallone said. I'm waiting. For what? For you to realize this isn't your gym. And right then the front door of the bar opened, and I kid you not, the guy who walked in changed everything. It was a man in his early 50s, short, stocky, wearing a windbreaker and a baseball cap. Nobody in the bar recognized him at first. He stood in the doorway, took in the scene, saw Stallone and Dale squaring off with a bar stool between them, saw the spilled whiskey, saw the 30 people frozen in their seats. Then Stallone saw him, and for the first time all night, Stallone's expression broke. He almost grinned. Chuck, he said. The man in the windbreaker was Chuck Wepner. Now, if that name doesn't hit you immediately, let me give you the 3 sentences you need. Chuck Wepner was the real Rocky. He was the journeyman heavyweight who went 15 rounds with Muhammad Ali in 1975 and even knocked Ali down in the 9th. Stallone watched that fight on closed-circuit TV and it inspired him to write the entire Rocky screenplay. Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder, standing in the doorway of a Sunset Boulevard bar while a martial arts instructor was trying to fight the guy who made him famous. You can't write this stuff. Except somebody did, and it's the universe. Chuck walked in. Didn't rush, didn't posture. He walked up to the bar, put himself between Stallone and Dale and ordered a beer. Just like that. He stood sideways so he could see both of them. His hands were at his sides. His cap was pulled low. Dale didn't know who he was. That was obvious. Dale looked at this older, shorter man who just inserted himself into the situation and said, "This doesn't involve you, old man." Chuck took his beer from the bartender, took a sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Kid," Chuck said, "I've been in 73 professional fights. I fought Ali, I fought Foreman, I fought Sonny Liston. I've had my nose broken 9 times, my cheekbone cracked twice, and I've got 312 stitches in my face." He turned and looked directly at Dale. "You want to tell me about fighting?" The room shifted, not physically, but something in the air rearranged itself. Dale's 2 buddies took a half step back. Dale himself straightened out of his stance, not all the way, but enough. His hands came down 2 inches. This is what I'm talking about. Stallone didn't beat Dale with his fists. He didn't need to. The universe dropped a real-life Rocky into the middle of the fight. But here's the thing. The night wasn't over. Not even close. Dale recovered. Guys like Dale always recover. They have too much invested in the persona to let it crack for long. He looked at Chuck and then back at Stallone. "This is cute. You brought a prop, an old boxer to back up a fake boxer. That's supposed to scare me?" Chuck didn't react. He just drank his beer. Stallone stepped around the bar stool. No obstacle between them now. He was close enough to Dale that either one could have thrown a punch and landed it. But Stallone still didn't put his hands up. He stood there, arms at his sides, and spoke in a voice low enough that only Dale and Chuck and maybe the bartender could hear him. "Let me tell you something about that old man," Stallone said. "He went 15 rounds with the greatest boxer who ever lived. He got knocked down, cut open, beaten to the point where blood was running into his eyes so bad he couldn't see, and he got up, every single time. He got up. You know why? Not because he thought he was going to win. He knew he wasn't going to win. He got up because he refused to be the kind of man who stays down." Stallone took 1 step closer. Now they were chest to chest. Dale had the height advantage. He had the reach advantage. He had the martial arts training. But in that moment, with Stallone's eyes locked on his, none of it seemed to matter. "I wrote a movie about that man," Stallone said. "About what it means to keep getting up. And you're standing here telling me it's a joke? That fighting is only real if it fits your system? That everything outside your karate studio is fake? Mark my words, this is where the power shifted, and it never shifted back. Dale opened his mouth to respond, but before he could get a word out, Chuck Wepner did something nobody expected. He set his beer down and he lifted up his windbreaker. Underneath his torso was a road map, scars everywhere, long white lines, puckered pink ridges, surgical marks, fight marks, marks that told the story of a man who had been opened up and stitched back together so many times his skin was more thread than flesh. Chuck didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He just stood there, holding his jacket up, and let Dale look. And Dale looked. For the first time all night, Dale's expression changed. Not to fear, not to anger, to something else. Something quieter. He saw the scars and he understood, maybe for the first time, that the man standing in front of him had paid for every single thing he knew about fighting. Not with trophies, not with tournament points, with blood and bone and years of pain. Dale's hands dropped all the way to his sides. Chuck lowered his jacket. He picked up his beer. He took another sip. And then Stallone did the thing that made this story a legend. He put his hand on Dale's shoulder. Not aggressively, not mockingly. The way a man touches another man when he's about to say something real. "You're good at what you do," Stallone said. "I can see that. You've trained hard, you believe in your art. That's not nothing. But don't tear other people down to build yourself up. That's not strength. That's fear." This is the moment right here. The vulnerability. Because Stallone wasn't just talking about Dale. He was talking about himself. He was a guy who'd been told his whole life that he wasn't good enough. Too slow, too dumb, couldn't talk right because of the nerve damage in his face from the forceps delivery that paralyzed part of his lip. He knew what it felt like to need to prove yourself so badly that you'd start a fight with a stranger in a bar just to feel legitimate. Dale stood there. His two buddies were by the door now. They could feel the night deflating. The confrontation they'd come for was dissolving into something they didn't have a category for. Dale looked at Stallone, looked at Chuck, looked at the bar full of people staring at him. "My students," Dale finally said. His voice was different now, stripped down. "They come to me because they want to feel strong. They want to know they can handle themselves. And when they see your movie, they think boxing is the only way. They think they're wasting their time with me. Now pay attention, because this is the part that separates a bar fight from a legend." Stallone heard what Dale actually said. Not the bravado, not the challenge, the fear underneath it. A man who was afraid his life's work was being made irrelevant by a movie. Stallone nodded slowly. "Your students aren't wasting their time. Any discipline that teaches someone to get up when they're knocked down is real. Boxing, karate, judo, doesn't matter. The art isn't the point. The getting up is the point." Stallone squeezed Dale's shoulder once and let go. The bar was absolutely still. Then Chuck Wepner, the Bayonne bleeder, the man who inspired Rocky Balboa, did something beautiful. He held up his beer toward Dale, a toast. Not sarcastic, not condescending, a genuine acknowledgement from one fighter to another. Dale stared at that beer for about 5 seconds. Then he reached over to the bar, picked up a glass someone had left, and he touched it to Chuck's. They drank, and just that fast, the night transformed, not into a party, into something more like a ceasefire. Dale sat down at the bar, not next to Stallone, a few stools away, close enough to talk, far enough to breathe. Here's what gets me every time I tell this story. What happened over the next hour was a conversation. Just a conversation. Stallone, Chuck Wepner, and Dale Mancuso talking about fighting, real fighting. Not styles against styles, not who would beat who. The actual experience of getting hit so hard you forget where you are and choosing to stand back up anyway. Chuck told the story of the Ali fight. The real version, not the movie version. How Ali hit him with a body shot in the 6th round that made Chuck feel like his ribs had turned to sand. How he went back to his corner and his trainer said quit, and Chuck said no. How he came out in the 9th and caught Ali with a right hand to the chest that knocked the heavyweight champion of the world to the canvas. And how the ref told Ali he had to wait to get up, and Ali said, "Like hell I do," and was back on his feet before the count of 3. Dale listened, really listened. His whole body language changed. The crossed arms were gone. The wide stance was gone. He was leaning forward on his elbows, hanging on every word, the way you listen when someone is telling you something true. Stallone talked about writing the Rocky script, how he did it in 3.5 days, how every studio wanted to buy it but cast somebody else, Ryan O'Neal, Burt Reynolds, James Caan, and Stallone kept saying no. He was broke. He had $106 in his bank account. And he kept saying no, because he knew if he sold that script without playing the lead, he'd be giving away the one shot he'd ever get. "I'd rather be broke and right than rich and empty," Stallone said. Dale nodded at that. You could see it land on him. And here is what gets lost in every retelling of this night. Around midnight, Dale asked Stallone something. He asked it quietly, almost embarrassed. "Would you ever consider visiting my gym, talking to my students? They'd lose their minds." Stallone looked at him for a long moment. "Yeah," he said, "I'd do that." And he did. 2 weeks later, Sylvester Stallone showed up at Dale Mancuso's martial arts studio in Torrance, California. He spent 3 hours there. He watched demonstrations. He let a 16-year-old, brown belt, throw him in a judo demonstration, and he hit the mat and laughed and got back up and asked the kid to do it again. He signed autographs for every single student. And at the end, he stood in front of the class and said 8 words that Dale later had painted on the wall of his gym. "It's not about the style, it's about the heart." Now here is where I need you to do something for me. If this story hit you the way it hit me the first time I heard it, if you felt something shift in your chest when Stallone put his hand on that man's shoulder instead of his fist, I need you to hit subscribe. Because stories like this are why I do this. Not the fights, not the drama. The moment when two people who should be enemies find the thing that makes them the same. Subscribe, and I'll keep bringing you these stories. That's a promise. Now let me finish this. Dale Mancuso ran his martial arts studios for another 22 years. He never told the bar story publicly while Stallone was active in Hollywood. He considered it private, a moment between men. But after he retired in 2000, he gave one interview to a small martial arts magazine, and he told the whole thing. Every detail, the shove, the bar stool, Chuck Wepner lifting his jacket, Stallone's hand on his shoulder. And he said something in that interview that I think about all the time. He said, "I walked into that bar thinking I was the toughest man alive. I walked out knowing that toughness has nothing to do with who you can beat. It has to do with who you can forgive, starting with yourself." Chuck Wepner passed away, rest his soul, but before he did, he told this story too. His version was shorter, simpler. He said, "I walked into a bar and Sly was about to get into it with some karate guy. I showed the guy my scars. We all had a drink. That's what fighters do. They fight and then they have a drink." That's Chuck. 15 rounds with Ali, and the man describes everything in 2 sentences. And Stallone? Stallone never talked about it publicly, not once, not in any interview I've ever found. But there's a moment in Rocky Balboa, the 2006 movie, the 6th one, where Rocky is talking to his son. And he says, "It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." Everyone knows that quote. Everyone. But I wonder, and this is just me talking now, I wonder if somewhere in the back of Stallone's mind, when he wrote that line, he was thinking about a night in 1978, a bar on Sunset, a big man with something to prove, a handshake that got refused, a shove that moved a bar stool 6 inches, and the choice, the deliberate, calculated, impossibly difficult choice, to not throw the punch. Because that's what real toughness looks like. Not the knockout, not the submission, not the spinning back kick or the right cross. Real toughness is standing chest to chest with a man who wants to destroy you and choosing to see the fear behind his fists. Real toughness is Stallone putting his hand on Dale's shoulder. Real toughness is Chuck Wepner lifting his jacket. Real toughness is Dale Mancuso touching his glass to a stranger's beer and admitting, without saying it out loud, that he'd been wrong. That bar on Sunset is gone now, torn down in the 90s, turned into a parking structure for a building that sells overpriced smoothies. The bartender, Mick, moved to Arizona. Ray, the stunt coordinator, worked on 3 more Stallone films before retiring. Dale's gym in Torrance is a CrossFit box now. The sign with Stallone's quote was saved by one of Dale's students and hangs in a martial arts museum in Las Vegas. Everything changes. Buildings come down. People move on. Names get forgotten. But the story survived. And that's because it was never really about Stallone or Dale or even Chuck Wepner. It was about the question that every single one of us faces at some point in our lives. When someone pushes you, when someone disrespects you, when someone tries to make you small in front of the people who matter, do you swing or do you stand? Not stand still, not stand passive. Stand tall, stand certain, stand in the full knowledge that you could swing, that you have every reason to swing, that the world would probably forgive you for swinging, and choose not to. That's what Stallone did that night. And that's why they still tell the story. The barstool moved 6 inches. The legend moved the whole world.